Hello, I'm Bill Martin, and I'd like to welcome you to On the Banks. On the Banks is a fraternity video and podcast series where we meet brothers, hear their stories, and celebrate the shared values of Phi Gamma Delta. Our guest for this segment is James Miervaldis, Johns Hopkins, 2006. James lives in the Washington, D.C. area where he works for the Department of Defense. He's also an officer of the National Capital Fiji's graduate chapter. And before James can tell you, I'll just tell you, it's one of our best. They're a great group that provide a lot of meaningful activities for our graduate brothers in that area. So for those of you who are watching or listening, if you're in the DC area and you've never participated in any activities of the Washington, DC graduate chapter called the National Capital Fiji's, I would encourage you to do that. Of particular significance for our conversation today is the fact that as a non-commissioned officer in the U.S. Army Reserves, James served in Iraq in 2008 to 2009, and then served in Afghanistan from 2011 to 2012. Most of our conversation today will focus on his work to assist Afghans who served as interpreters for the U.S. military. So James, thank you for being with us.
This is a real honor, Bill. It's wonderful to see you again. The last time I saw you was about 3 years ago.
Yes.
For the event with Justice Gorsuch at the University Club.
Indeed.
It was a wonderful time, and it was great to see everyone. So it's great to reconnect, even though it's over Zoom.
Yes, indeed. I've been looking forward to the conversation. Before we delve into our main topic, tell the brothers about how you became a Fiji at Johns Hopkins.
It's a funny story. Actually, one of my best friends in college, a gentleman named Chris Temple, said, "You better do this." So I joined my sophomore year and haven't looked back since. The friendships I made in college are still with me. Now I got to date myself. This will be 16 years since graduation. So I think there's an L coming up in my future.
That's right.
So, and Chris is a big reason for my service. The Phi Gamma alumni, the Beta Muse at Hopkins, have a very, very long and prestigious history of service, going back to World War I. Mm-hmm. Chris exemplified that. At the time, our Purple Legionnaire, a gentleman named Danny Organic, was an Army Ranger. Very big influence in my decision to enlist and see for myself what that experience was like. So point is, it was Chris as a friend, as a good influence, pointed me in the right direction, and still here.
And you served as an officer of the chapter when you were an undergraduate?
Yes, corresponding secretary. I have a knack for emails and trying to reach back and engage alumni, getting them more involved in the day-to-day activities of the chapter. I'm very proud of some of the other mentors I had, like Jared Bernstein, who went on and served for Mayor Bloomberg, but he was a big factor in helping craft the messaging and really reconnecting older alumni. We had a Korean war vet come back and meet a gentleman named Alex Brown, who had just returned from flying Apache helicopters in Afghanistan. That was 2005 or it was 2006. 2006 that was our big dinner. And bringing those two guys together, there was something I'll never forget. So decades between them, but the passion for the fraternity, the service they both endured, it really was it was something else.
Yes, very good, very good. Now, so during your tour in Afghanistan, you worked with an Afghan interpreter named Khalid, who tell us how Khalid assisted you and the U.S. military mission in his country.
So the U.S. military would hire local nationals, and depending on the situation, it was literally finding someone on the street who spoke some English. Now, most of these interpreters learned English from watching movies. I had the opportunity to later meet an interpreter named Janice Shinwari, who's an incredible advocate for interpreters. and the SIV program, that stands for Special Immigrant Visa. And that's something we'll talk about, that promise made to these people who took a chance and said, hey, I believe in your values. We'll talk about values too. So most of these people learned English through, as Janice did, through watching Commando with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And they'd pick up on the vernacular, the way, the slogans, and the way you say things. Khalid had the opportunity to learn at school, so his English was excellent. We've heard of other interpreters that learned by watching bootleg videos of Friends. So I bring this anecdote up because it's that soft power of American values showcased in Hollywood, showcased in the media. That's what people see, and that's what people take inside and say, yeah, that's what I want in my life. Sometimes these folks were hired right off the street. It was good money. Sometimes they came through contracts. Khalid came to us through a contract through the State Department, and I met him at the National Security Court on the outskirts of Bagram Air Base. There was a prison there. Yeah, we have to talk about that in the past tense today, in 2022. So yeah, we met August 2011.
And the two of you worked directly together from time to time?
Correct. So the way the National Security Court, which was it was an interesting, let me explain how I got to Afghanistan. I had finished up my master's degree. I had reached out to several FIGAMs. And this was, again, 2011. I graduated in 2006 during a recession, and finding work was not easy. So I found myself after my first deployment with a master's degree, applying and applying and applying, and getting frustrated. But I had talked to several FIGAMs. They said, look, if you're interested, there are opportunities to deploy again. You seem to like it over there. And I started thinking about it. I'm happy to share with the brothers out there. I was miserable. I was working $10 an hour at Home Depot with a master's degree. Not to knock Home Depot. It's a great place to visit. Just don't want to work there. And that was a good experience too. I met a lot of veterans in the area, and it was actually General James Amos, the Marine Corps Commandant, who came into the shop to buy some paint to fix up his home at the time in Old Town Alexandria. We got to talking, and he said, you don't want to be here. Go take the initiative. I could see it in your eyes. And so I took the opportunity. I found an opportunity to go work at the National Security Court, and that had about 200 Afghan partners from about 5 different ministries, plus the Afghan army there. And the whole purpose was them managing the prison and the rule of law. Khalid was the bridge. Not only just for interpreting what I was saying, but also translating the cultures and the expectations. I was a guest, and let me back up. The first thing we had learned when you got over there was about the honor code of Pashtunwali. For the brothers out there, that is featured very strongly in the movie Lone Survivor, and in that book, where the hospitality of the Pashtuns it brings tears to your eyes thinking about, well, if a guest came to your house in need, what would you do? So it was very clear that we were guests in their country, and this was their process. And he was the one that guided us through that. It was that cultural respect that really made us so successful.
Now, there was a risk for him in doing this. We've heard about this in the news, especially last summer, as the wind down occurred, the withdrawal occurred. There was a risk for translators and others who worked with and supported the U.S. military. You mentioned that he was paid; these translators were paid, but I doubt that I doubt that the pay adequately compensated for the risks. So what were some other things that motivated him to be willing to take on that really life or death risk of being known as having assisted the U.S. military?
There was an implicit promise that if you work with us, or as a FIGAM who was vice president last administration said in 2007 when he was a member of Congress, if you stand by us, we'll stand by you. And that's Vice President Pence. He said that in congressional testimony. The understanding was that there was going to be a ticket, a visa. Now, there wasn't an expectation that it would take 3 years of paperwork and all sorts of other things, but the end goal was that because of values, that he and his family could eventually resettle in the United States and have a opportunity at the American dream.
Yes.
So thinking about our own values of friendship, morality, service, knowledge, and excellence, I saw the same things with him. Now, not all Afghans had that. There was a lot of corruption. We got some pretty funny stories about that, and some sad stories as well. But for very special individuals like Khalid, those values resonated, and that's how we became such good friends. It was much more of a friendship than a transactional, professional relationship, if that makes sense.
Sure.
He would bring. Yep. He brought me a present for my birthday. I get him protein from the PX because we have a lot of Afghans that are big into weightlifting. Things like that. It was a sign of respect. It was a sign of trust. But yes, and that last sign was that visa. That was that last promise.
But underlying it all, it sounds like was his respect for the values the values of America, and he wanted to be able to live under those kinds of values and in that kind of environment. Yeah,
he has stories. Growing up, I'm maybe a year older than him, but so again, growing up on two different sides of the world, I never worried about the Taliban catching me with a DVD that I wasn't supposed to have and beating me, or the fact that I didn't have a headscarf on. He would wear a turban to school. That was the Taliban mandated uniform, and if he didn't have it, you were beaten. He had a lot of stories talking about growing up, or what it was like growing up before the 2001 invasion, and just now that he's raising his daughter here, he fully appreciates just the freedom and the peace that she can enjoy, and she can do whatever. She's a daughter. There's no limitations here. Yes. And that's something else. Well, I'll say one more thing too, Bill. I can't talk about Khalid without talking about his wife. Mm-hmm. So Zulfia was one of the first female prosecutors, and she is incredible. It's beautiful to see them two together. She's restarting her legal career here. But the stories that she had to overcome growing up through literally 40 years of war, even before the U.S. There was the Russians, and then there was the Civil War with the Mujahideen and the Taliban, and these people persevere. They persist. It's incredible.
Live through authoritarian regimes and turmoil and violence throughout their country. So
and don't carry a grudge, and they don't carry a grudge. They're angry, obviously, but it's not. There's no resentment that you've had a charmed life. How dare you come here and tell me how to live? Very quickly, this is one of my favorite stories for the brothers out there. I was just in a bad mood. I mean, I was away from home. I was just not happy. And it was freezing cold. You're at 5,000 feet. The Hindu Kush are in the distance. And they're beautiful. You're at the tail end of the Himalayas. And one of the partners, one of the lawyers who would come in, they would drive through checkpoints for 30 miles coming from Kabul. They'd all band together. Anyway, he was wearing the same sweater he'd worn all week. And I just made a comment with Khalid and says, "Hey, you're wearing your sweater again." And the guy looks at Khalid and says in Dari, he says, he asks, he goes, "What, you like it?" And Khalid says, he wants to know if you like it. And I'm like, "Yeah, man, I like it. Okay." And then, again, the guy hadn't showered in a couple weeks and things like that. Freezing cold. Well, the guy takes his sweater off and gives it to me. That was the only sweater he owned. And because I was a guest in his country and I expressed that I liked something, he wanted to give me that as a present. So Khalid had to very politely thank him and say, no, we don't want him freezing to death. We're going to give him back the sweater. But it was just little things like that. And that making that translate is not easy.
Yes, sure. So when after you returned from that deployment in Afghanistan, you went to work with Khalid to try to get him the special immigrant visa that you mentioned earlier, the SIV.
Correct.
Explain a little bit more about what a special immigrant visa is. You alluded to it a little bit. What is it, and what's the process like to get one?
Sure. So the special immigrant visa program was actually signed into law first with the Iraq program in 2007, and the intent of it was actually Senator McCain and Senator Kennedy came together because Ambassador Crocker, who was the ambassador over in Baghdad at the time, lost two embassy workers. One was kidnapped. The other tried to pay a ransom. She was grabbed. They were both found murdered. So the intent was to provide a fast track to get endangered partners the visas that they deserve. Now there were limits. You had to pass security screenings. You had to have at least in the beginning, I believe it was 2 years of faithful and valuable service. But the key here, Bill, is faithful and valuable service was never defined. The Afghan program stood up in 2009. It started with a trickle of visas. Eventually, in the recent years, it got up to about 4,000, and that was key. It's 4,000 interpreters plus their families. So multiplied by 4, you're talking about 16,000 people a year. Drop in the bucket for immigration statistics. And no matter what side of the political spectrum the brothers listening are on, or especially immigration is a very tough subject. This is just a good conversation just to realize what some folks had to do to get here. And so I felt very passionate about it because my dad is a refugee from World War II. And he has memories of waiting in Germany after the war, waiting for a chance. He had a surrogate family, a sponsor family through the Lutheran Church that said, hey, we're going to take you in. We're going to make sure you learn English. We're going to get you on your own 2 feet. And we're telling the government it's on us to make sure you're successful. That unfortunately, that process went away. So what came in place was just bureaucracy and going through about 13 different steps. It got to the point with just inertia or the program not being funded as well or resourced with staff or money or making it a priority that it would take years, 3 to 5 years on average, just to pass paperwork or you have that paperwork screened. Again, this is 2009. We're not talking 20, 30, 40 years ago. You can order anything on Amazon. They do 1 billion orders a day.
So this 3 years, this 3 years was even in circumstances where there were no negative issues or anything. Everything was all as required for the applicant. It just took 3 years without any sorts of delays because of particular snags or negative marks in their record or anything like that, right?
You got it. Now, when I got back from Afghanistan, my first job was working at the VA and working to digitize the VA claims process. I remember going down to Roanoke, Virginia, and I know there's a lot of veterans in our fraternity. I know there's a lot of Phi Gams out there who have service members in their family going all the way back, and people that depend on the VA. So I went down to Roanoke, Virginia on a fact-finding mission with the government staff as a contractor. And we literally saw cement floors sagging from all the paper of claims. And we're talking, think about Indiana Jones and just rows and rows and rows of filing cabinets with then files stacked on top of files on top of the cabinets. So there wasn't even a system to the point where while everyone knew this was broken back in, I think, the 80s, we were told, there was no answer and nobody wanted to do the full heavy lift to transform the process. So what did the government do? The government just reinforced the floors. to hold all that paper and punted for several more decades.
Yes.
Anyway, it was that experience, and then looking at the SIV experience that really colored my perception and really encouraged me to learn all the different hurdles and challenges like you just brought up.
Sure. So how long did it take Khalid from the time that he began the process until he got the visa?
Yep, 3 years, almost to the date.
3 years.
And here's how it transpired. So of the 13 steps, he sailed through. He was fine. And then he hit step 13, administrative processing. It's a black hole. And the more I started researching about this, I asked FIGAMS on Capitol Hill to help put in congressional inquiries, and they were wonderful. They really helped push that out. And even the Congress members would get standard answers like, we can't tell you when things are going to move. Mm-hmm. You're a member of Congress. Well, the bureaucracy pushed back. Then I found out, looking online about, I wasn't the only one having these problems. Veterans all across the country, in and out of uniform, trying to help their interpreters who, again, we're in a modern era, who they email, they write on Facebook. Even with the time difference, you'll wake up and it's like, hey buddy, how are you? I'm in Afghanistan. It's that connection maintained and kept being stronger even when people left theater. The roughly 800,000 veterans over there, most Facebook with the algorithms would find people that know people and whatnot, and next thing you know, you're friends with a bunch of Afghans. Mm-hmm. So on Facebook, and they're liking your pictures and all sorts of stuff. So anyway, I bring that up because it was that dichotomy between the bureaucracy not working and nobody. It wasn't like someone was saying don't do this. It was just apathy, mm-hmm. and then the rest of the world moving on.
Yeah.
So he sat there for about a year, and that's when I engaged Senator Tim Kaine's office, who were great. They followed up with the State Department every 90 days. Again, this is something I learned at the VA. Cases that get congressional attention get more attention from the bureaucracy.
Right.
It's a sad truth. So, and what I saw, think about that homeless veteran. Does he have a congressman or a senator looking out for him specifically about his case at the VA? The answer is probably no. He's at the bottom of the pile. Same goes with the special immigrant visa applicants.
So Khalid what year did he get his visa?
2016, and he got right on a plane.
2016, he came right to the U.S. Was he single at that time?
No, he was married.
Married.
He brought over his wife, his daughter, and started a new life here.
So what's he been doing, and how's he doing? How's he adjusted to life in America?
It was hard, and to be very honest, Bill, it was very difficult. Khalid had a bachelor's degree from the University of Kabul in law. It's not the same as a law degree here. He eventually he joined the bar as a foreign lawyer, but initially he was driving for Uber. He was getting very frustrated applying for jobs and saying, "Oh, sorry, you don't have a U.S. accredited education." So you go behind all the other applicants, and these are hardworking people. They're excellent project managers. They're brilliant, but they don't get a chance because they're on green card status. So not being a citizen, not having a U.S. Accredited education, not having a U.S. past performance in the job program, the government isn't saying, "Hey, we need your language skills." Most of these folks speak 4-5 languages. The demand from the Department of Defense and the State Department just wasn't there for linguists anymore. He tried to join the military, and it was just the wrong timing. The military used to have programs where you could get your citizenship. I actually deployed with a young lady who became a citizen, and then they put her on the plane to Iraq. But she knew it was a very proud day for her. We were all there in formation. It was a big deal. It just shows you just how much this means to people all around the world. But he's doing much better. So thank you for asking. He just became a citizen last month. Very proud. Him and his wife are U.S. citizens. He has his own legal consultant firm. He's doing great. I'm going to work for him one day.
You were there. You were there for his naturalization ceremony, were you not?
I was standing outside because of COVID, but
Okay.
I was
Yeah.
there at the airport when he landed in 2016. And that's another thing. As many of the military FIGAMs out there remember, just the homecomings, coming off the plane and seeing your loved ones, it chokes you up. And we've several veterans, most veterans feel that these folks are veterans.
Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't born in the United States, but they should be treated as such.
Yes.
So just, yeah, they're part of the family.
Right. Right. So, so in addition to helping Khalid, you've worked with other veterans to try to simplify, to provide some pressure somewhere to simplify and expedite the SIV process overall for other Afghans. So tell us a little bit about why that work is so important. You've talked about your personal experience with Khalid, why that was important to you. Why is the program more broadly so important to make it work?
Well, it's the epitome of America's promise. Again, we're getting back in the immigration debate, and that was very difficult. We worked for several years with Ambassador Ryan Crocker, General David Petraeus, others, to build a huge bipartisan coalition on Capitol Hill, senators and House members, because Senator John McCain, he was the champion. This was a very near and dear issue to him, and when he passed, this issue was left out of the National Defense Authorization Act. It was just forgotten about. There's thousands of military issues. So how do you, without a champion, how do you make sure one doesn't get lost in the shuffle? And this one did. Eventually, the visas got in through another appropriations, the Senate Foreign Operations Appropriations Bill. But it's really been a struggle. And what we did was we framed it as a national security element. We probably have FIGAMs in some very dark places around the world right now who are relying on local nationals to help them and to keep them safe. So actually, it's a true story. We're recording this on January 13th. Last night, I had the opportunity to meet up with one of our favorite Archons, Mr. Josh Hawley, former Archon. Josh has just been an incredible supporter of building national capital Fiji and really bringing the Ecclesia to DC, which we'll talk about soon. But we were meeting to talk about just some of the DoD work I'm engaged in, and we bumped into Representative Guthrie, the FIGAM congressman that we have up there from Kentucky.
Yes.
As soon as he recognized us and was very proud of being in Fiji and everything like that. So we'll see more of them. But the whole point is that you can have as much technology in the world, but it really is the man or woman to your left or right, that friendship that really protects not only Americans in harm's way and our brave men and women who are on the front lines, but it's also these people were our best weapon. They were our sensors. If we listened to them more, maybe things would have changed. But we will be in another conflict that I'm sadly sure of. And we will need interpreters. Our special operations forces will rely on interpreters well into the future.
And if the impression those prospective interpreters have of the U.S. is of Afghans left in Afghanistan under danger from the Taliban, then they're going to be much less inclined to assist.
Yeah. We were talking to a gentleman at the Special Operations Low Intensity Conflict level, the Assistant Secretary's level, a couple years back, and he was now he's Lieutenant Colonel. He was a Green Beret he was acting as like the desk officer secretariat for the position, and he was the one that brought up. He said, "Wait, time out. Let's look at this from a recruiting point of view. You've got guys that have battle tested, been shot at, grown up in this environment, speak 5 languages. And the way our system works right now is that they have to wait 3 years for a visa. They have to then wait 5 years approximately for citizenship. Then they can join the military, go through 2-3 years of training, and go right back to where they were." Right. That's not how the rest of the world operates. The Chinese, the Russians, they don't do that. So we are shooting ourselves short. We are, it's frustrating too,
Sure.
especially when you have just people who continually want to serve. One last thing, we had an Iraqi interpreter recently who just enlisted in the Marine Corps. He's doing great. The kid was fighting ISIS in Mosul. Got one of 2 Iraqi visas a couple years back, and finally a recruit got in through the military process, and now he's with a bunch of other 21, 22-year-olds who say, hey, I was in high school. Well, he was battling with Navy SEALs in Mosul. So it's the opportunity to just learn from people like that. It's so incredible.
Yes. Now, late last summer, in the weeks and days leading up to the final U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, what were some of your experiences and emotions as all of that was unfolding? And that there was a lot of attention on this issue of supporters, Afghans, people who had supported the U.S. mission there, who were potentially going to be left behind, and many who were left behind. What was going on for you at that time, both in terms of experience and emotion, as that was unfolding?
This was the worst case scenario. This was a nightmare. All the hard work we did, the coalitions we built, with, I think we were up to like 70 members. I mean, it was a lot. There was
70 members of Congress.
I mean, so it wasn't, and that's the other thing too, Bill. I'm very inclined into process and okay, what's it going to take to get this, to fix this program? I worked for 3 years to get to go through the resolution process with the VFW to get a national resolution. The summer before, we got the American Legion resolution. We worked with several veteran nonprofit groups, and it wasn't enough. We had a TV show, the U.S. Eval, written by a Marine who's still working to bring his interpreter over. So we had a main character on network TV during prime time, telling the story, telling that personal story, and both the main actors really did an excellent job. I had the opportunity to work with them quite a bit, and they got it. They did great honor and credit to their roles. So seeing everything just be eclipsed by the situation, and you got to remember, and these people, the interpreters waiting for their visas, were dealt a lot of bad hands. The first one being the embassy had shut down for, if I remember correctly, 9 months the year before because of COVID. No embassy, that means no consular officers, means no interviews, means nothing's moving. It reopened briefly, then it closed again for COVID. Then the evacuation happened. So a lot of, I'm trying to remember the numbers. And even the State Department they weren't producing the reports as timely as they had previously done about how many people are waiting at this level in the queue, how many people are at step 13, administrative processing. So it was a guessing game. And the sad thing is, we started seeing more and more reports of people saying, okay, well, I got an email from the embassy saying, stand by. And then the news came that they were going to be evacuated. Well, then the last planes left and people were still waiting. It was pretty awful. So I had the opportunity to express these concerns to Secretary of State Blinken on a Zoom call like this. So Bill, I'm honored to be talking to someone of your caliber again. And to his credit, the secretary acknowledged it. He heard the pain and the frustration from the veterans, and also Secretary McDonough from the VA.
Yeah.
That said, 4 months later, there's still tens of thousands of people who rightfully deserve a visa and deserve to get out of Afghanistan who are waiting. And the process hasn't changed much. We've tried to work with the State Department, the State Department Attorney, Inspector General, the National Security Council, the Defense Digital Service. Those are all your hackers who are trying to make sure that IT systems talk between your own government. And I bring up all of this just to show you how many unknown obstacles are in the way of for these people to achieve that promise that they rightfully deserve.
Yes. Well, we'll sure hope that that somehow or other many of those folks can make it to the U.S. In the meantime, there are thousands who in recent months have come to the U.S. A lot of them waiting to be resettled, sitting in limbo, maybe in a hotel or motel somewhere, not knowing where their real sort of permanent residence is going to be. And I know there are a lot of efforts to help those folks. They need a lot of help, and so that they're not forgotten. Do you have any suggestions for brothers who may be interested in supporting those people in some way, doing something to make their lives a little better? Are there any suggestions you would have for brothers for
please,
working with Afghan immigrants?
Yes, definitely visit welcome.us. That's what Presidents Bush, Obama, and Clinton banded together on that initiative. There's also rescue.org. That's the IRC. They're the lead resettlement agency. And again, I'm trying to make this educational. I'm not trying to do any political talking points or anything like that. The resettlement agencies were caught off guard by the rapid evacuation because the previous administration, their budgets were cut. So you had a perfect storm where the people that were supposed to be the safety net for these refugees and immigrants were just in a bad spot to begin with, and we're still trying to figure out things with the new administration. So they started reaching out to normal Americans and are asking for Airbnb credits to bring in these families. And actually, I get a little emotional thinking about it, Bill, because the evacuation was August 15th. About 2 weeks later, no kidding, here in Northern Virginia, a neighbor texted me and said, "Hey, there's a bunch of Afghan guys hanging out at the community college down the street. You might want to check that out." And sure enough, the federal government, these were the first people. They were on the C-7 that unfortunately had the people hanging to the wings and falling off the wheels. These were the people on the inside of that plane. You got to remember that there was a straight chaos. People rushed into the airport. You had locals who never worked for the Americans before. You had people that were waiting in line for days who had worked for the Americans were trying to get in. It was just straight chaos. Anyway, those people ended up at the community college, and the federal government kind of dropped them on the state and local emergency management folks and said, "Can you take care of this for like 48 hours? We're still working on our plan." So a tweet went out, and within hours, the community rallied. They had enough blankets, food, baby formula, diabetic equipment, hair gel. That was one of the main demands from a lot of the young men that escaped. So anyway, the Americans have always risen to the occasion, and that was incredible to see and talk to the officers and the resettlement folks there. The
two websites you said, welcome.us and rescue.org.
Correct. Those are the two.
Welcome.us and rescue.org. At both of those, there's information about how to help with the Afghans who have recently come to the U.S. Very good. Very good. Now,
Bill, the other thing is, for those in Northern Virginia, you've got about 3,000 SIV families that have come here over the years. There's over 100,000 Afghan families that, again, fled civil war, or fled the Russians, fled civil war, fled the war now, and then fled the Taliban. So ask your Uber driver, ask where they're from, and encourage ask the stories, tell the stories. I've had wonderful Uber drivers who are just so proud and happy to be here, and I try to help them with looking at their resume, forwarding the resume, whatever you can do to help. Things like that is great.
Sure. Very good. Now, let's talk about the ecclesia. So, I want to thank you for your military service. Thank you for what you've done and continue to do to try to help those people from Afghanistan who really sacrificed a lot, put themselves at risk in order to support the U.S. mission there. Switching gears, let's talk about the ecclesia then, because the ecclesia is going to be in Washington, D.C. this coming summer, and I sense that you're a little excited about that.
Yes, we've been working on this since 2013. I want to give a big shout out to Tim Nank, Ben Shan, Frank O'Hara, Shane Martin, a lot of different names of guys that started at the beginning. National Capital Fiji was resurrected around 2008, and Tim Nank at the time was working in the White House, working at the Homeland Security Council. Tim, we met at a happy hour along with John Toner. Bill, you had talked to them along with a Fiji professor of mine, Jim Wilkinson, I think a little earlier, saying, hey, this Delta Chi was a pretty happening thing back in the 70s, and even before that, World War I. It was a great association, and I like to think just assisted with helping DC be more congenial, more bipartisan. There's nothing a friendship can overcome, especially if you make those bonds and you take that time. So we started coming up with ideas and still working on battle rhythms and stuff, rhythms of events. But right now we've got over 300 FIGAMs from over 100 different chapters who've made DC their home. What united us are stories, lots of stories, and our tradition. So we worked very hard to build this community, this network, and we're just thrilled to have the 174th ecclesia. It's the 5th historical ecclesia here in Washington, D.C. We have many FIGAM monuments around here. 3 former headquarters locations. We're going to have a scavenger hunt. We're going to go to Arlington National Cemeteries, just like the guys did back 1932, to pay respects to Frank Keck. Found his grave. It's a little bit of a hike, but we'll go. The Calvin Coolidge mascot from the Nationals might show up. That's John Toner's effort. So we'll figure out if we can make this happen. But it's going to be great. And again, just want to thank everyone who's supported us and the other graduate chapters out there. And it's great to see the friendship be this strong.
Yes. Yep. Excellent. Well, if the National Capital Fijis are in the middle of things, we can be sure that there's going to be a lot of exciting activities going on. We look forward to it.
Well, you can't forget Major Garrett.
No.
So Major Garrett is one of our all-time favorites. He has been his podcast is just one of the best ones out there. He actually just won an award for it. But it's him having a conversation like this, Bill. It's called The Debrief. He also has The Takeout, but you can't go to restaurants much with COVID, so unfortunately that's taken a break. But his passion for mentoring, Fiji's coming up, the passion for being excellent in his career, I can't thank him enough. The other one's Ambassador Kofor Black, a gentleman who was there when the decision to go to war was made. He was in the room, and he talked about that at our first Big Pig dinner leading up to our 100th anniversary. So it's just learning these stories, passing down those experiences to help the next generation of courageous leaders. We got permission. We borrowed that slogan from the Educational Foundation, and we've actually offered over we've done about 5 or 6 scholarships to FIGAMs coming to intern in DC over the summer. So by all means, if you're interested out there in interning in DC and would like to apply for the scholarship, please visit the figam.org/scholarships page. All the information's right there.
Very good. Very good. Well, James, again, we thank you for your service to our country, but also thank you for all the things that you do for Phi Gamma Delta, particularly through the National Capital Fiji's graduate chapter. And I know that our brothers are going to be better informed on some very important issues as a result of some of the things that you've imparted during our conversation today.
Well, Bill, I was going to tell you, yes, the SIV, if we did fix the SIV program, that was going on the Brightman Award. A number of FIGAMs have helped quietly, making introductions to senior government officials or doing what they can. I mean, it really, it means the world. And that's just something that I take great pride in, and very thankful for. So, Bill, it's an honor to see you again, and thank you for this. I'm mighty proud.
Yeah, mighty proud. Look forward to seeing you this summer.
Less than 7 months.
I will be there. James, thanks again. For those of our listeners and viewers, as you can see, there are many interesting stories in Phi Gamma Delta. We'll hope you will join us again and check out other segments of On the Banks as we talk with brothers and hear their stories, and again share the values of Phi Gamma Delta. Until next time, I'm mighty proud to be a Fiji.